Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is July 9th, 2020. We're going to be talking about an interesting company. If you're somebody who is a fan of the low carb, especially low sugar lifestyle, which you should be, because there's so much good evidence that shows that eliminating sugar from your diet and dropping carbs can reverse brain age. It can change your gut. It can reduce entire whole body inflammation. It can reset insulin sensitivity, which is a big problem today. So it becomes increasingly harder and harder to pick foods that fit into that wheelhouse. And we're going to be talking about a company that actually has a one-stop shop for just about everything that you could think of that you want. Before we do that, we have to, of course, lead off with thanking our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. By the way, I'm getting messages from people now on Instagram. They're tagging me where they're following my advice. I will have a spoonful of Legendary Foods nut butters, which have no sugar added. I think some nuts have a little sugar in them. And as my dessert some nights, and it just satisfies me. And now I'm getting messages from people that they're doing the same thing. Legendary Foods is our title sponsor. Please go to eatlegendary.com. Use the code SHR to save 10% off your entire order and let them know that you learned about them here on Superhuman Radio. My guest today is Chris Irvin. He is with a company who's aptly named Perfect Keto. How you doing, Chris?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Carl?
Wonderful. Before we talk about this, talk about yourself a little bit. How did you find your way into the world of low carb, low or no sugar keto lifestyle? Do you have a story that drove you to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was 2015 when I first heard about the diet. I was about 6 months out of my undergrad. I graduated undergrad with biology and exercise science. I was starting to get a little bit more into nutrition, so I was deciding to go back to graduate school to get my master's in nutrition science. So I went to the University of Tampa for that. And about 4 or 5 months before the school year started, I went down to Tampa for a conference down there. And at that conference, I was introduced to keto by Dr. D'Agostino and Dr. Jeff Volek, who, at the time, being a new guy to the industry, didn't know that these two guys were like, now they're on like the Mount Rushmore of keto scientists, and at the time I didn't know who these guys even were. So I got introduced to the diet by the best of them. And then a couple months later, I started school, and my first class was a sports nutrition class. And I had played sports in my undergrad. I'd played basketball and baseball, and was always under this assumption that carbohydrates were really important for performance, and they were like the only really way that you could go about fueling your body when it came to athletic performance and building muscle and everything like that. And in this first class, I had a lot of that debunked, and most of it was around like endurance performance and things like that. But I had this thought debunked that you had to have carbohydrates, and I had low carb dieting for performance and keto dieting for performance really introduced to me. So after that class, I jumped right into starting the diet myself. I figured this was something that I needed to give a try. So I started doing it, and back in 2015, there really wasn't a whole lot of great resources out there for keto yet. But I made a ton of mistakes along the way while I was doing it. But then, shortly after that, I started researching in the lab the ketogenic diet for human performance. So I was studying the diet in college athletes, baseball players, basketball players, and then just general college kids as well, looking at like body composition, strength and power measures, dietary adherence, all kinds of things like that. And then about midway through my graduate studies, I started really getting into, I picked up the book Tripping Over the Truth by Travis Christofferson. And if nobody's ever read that book, highly recommend it. It's it's just a really eye-opening book on, just things that are going on in the therapeutic world and things that aren't going on in the therapeutic world that should be. And that book really introduced to me the therapeutic side of low carb dieting and how, keto could be a viable option for diabetes and cancer and maybe even some of these neurodegenerative diseases. So that really set me on this different path towards studying more of the therapeutic side of things. And, at that time, being that I was in Tampa, Florida, I was really fortunate enough to get a little intern spot over at Dr. D'Agostino's lab at USF, and got to spend some time with that great group of researchers there, just learning from the best. So studied that for a few months with them, just great opportunity, and after that I kind of had this realization that there's so much great work being done. Over the last year, my graduate studies took about a year, and when I graduated, I realized how much research I had come across that showed the benefits of low carb dieting, but how little that information was accessible by the general population. So that was where I kind of found my calling, was to get out there into the world more, get into the industry more, get into education more, and just start trying to take some of those really great studies and dispel them and break them down so people could understand how to apply them to their lives and kind of go through and debunk some of the things. And that's what led me to eventually working for Perfect Keto today. So
and we're gonna talk about Perfect Keto in a second. But what you said, there's a certain nuance to what you said that it always strikes me that I forget it, and that is that we live in this bubble of like-minded people, right? Where we talk about stuff and we don't have to explain words, the common lexicon. We share it all, and then when you get outside this bubble, which is actually really small when you look at it on a societal basis, and then you find out people don't understand or know any of these things. Like, there's people out there who still don't know that a study was published end of last year that showed that by reducing sugar intake, all the markers of brain aging were reversed in humans. It's like, wait a minute, what? Like, so in other words, that a healthy plate, my plate, or the food pyramid is like actually aging me faster. And they find it hard to believe when they're like, no, this can't be, because the government wouldn't do that. Wait a minute. This has nothing to do with the government conspiracies, nothing like that. You have to remember, the government has a big investment in wheat and corn, and you need to eat it for them to get their investment back. So they are biased about what you should eat because they invest in agriculture. They don't want to invest in agriculture and then promote an idea that, hey, all these refined flours and carbohydrates are really causing a lot of problem in society. So stop eating them. By the way, how are we going to get that $7 billion back from the corn guys again? I forget. Since we just crapped on their business, how are we going to get it back?
Yeah. And that's one of the most disheartening things. I was thinking about that today, actually, before this podcast, was how, you have some people out there who just don't care about their health, right? And those are the people that they're a little bit harder to help. But then you have the people out there who actively do care, and they're trying to figure out what to do about their health. They're trying to look at these recommendations that are given to them by governing bodies because they trust them and they think that they're the best to follow. But when you look at these recommendations that are coming out and you see how ridiculous they are, and that in this case, actually counterproductive for helping, people are coming to these things hoping that they are slowing aging, or that they're, help fighting off chronic disease or improving their current health state. And that's not the case at all. In most cases, what's being recommended to us is doing the exact opposite. So I think that's one of the most frustrating things, is when people actually want to improve themselves, but they can't get to the bottom of what they should actually do to get to that point.
Talk about the genesis of Perfect Keto. How does this company come about, obviously?
Yeah, so we have two wonderful founders at Perfect Keto, which is Dr. Anthony Gustin and Justin Maris. And these two guys started the company back in 2016, I believe, was when they started. First product that they came out with was an exogenous ketone supplement. Dr. Gustin was somebody he's a chiropractor. He had his own clinics, was on kind of the cutting edge of nutrition. Justin was more on the business building side of things. He had already built a couple successful companies. Anthony had seen this opportunity and saw that, exogenous ketones were something that he thought was going to be very beneficial for people. So he was a little bit ahead of, there weren't a lot of products out on the market yet at that point. People didn't. They
still had small cult followings. Yeah. Small niche followings at that point in time.
Yeah. Definitely was not a mainstream thing at all. And so that was the first product that they came out with. He wanted to get something that was actually, efficacious out there, but then also tasted good, which was a big thing, because You know,
The chocolate
back when I was.
chocolate is delicious, by the way. I got to
Oh,
say that
thank
to the
you.
audience. I take your chocolate collagen powder
Mhm.
and the chocolate ketones,
Great
and I
mix.
mix them together and then train because I
Yep.
want the collagen in the interstitial fluids so it can
Mhm.
be absorbed by soft tissue, and I don't want to eat anything before I train. So it's
Right.
great for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great
Anyway.
combo. I like that one too. And well, what you say with the taste too. I mean, when I was in grad school, we were I was actually doing some research, and this was long before Perfect Keto, but I was doing some research with exogenous ketone salts. And what we would do is we'd have to mix like these raw powders into water and put Mio in them to flavor them, and they tasted horrible. I mean, it was trying to get that down was pretty hard, especially getting test subjects to drink these things was not easy. So, having a product that actually, and that was how I was introduced to Perfect Keto, was I was drinking these salts. I saw this product out on the market. They sent some for me to try, and I was like, hey, this stuff actually tastes pretty good. I didn't even think it would be possible to make this taste good. So that was the first product. And, they really hit at a good time when keto was really starting to blow up, and they put a lot of great complementary products around that. MCT oil powder, collagen, came out with, an electrolyte supplement. And then from there, we've started to really get into food products. And the MO with the company has always been quality of ingredients. Anthony is somebody who, our bars, for instance, we talked about those a little bit before, how you really like the bars. We went through, I think, 12 or 13 different iterations of that bar because Anthony would not put out anything that compromised ingredient quality or that spiked his blood sugar. He just kept going through testing. And I always tell that story as kind of so people understand where his product development comes from. He's just somebody that's so passionate about putting clean things out there and actually putting stuff out there that people can understand. You go to a store and you pick up like a health food now, or you pick up something labeled keto, and the ingredient list is 50 ingredients long. You can't pronounce half of them. Maybe the net carbs is low, but you eat some of these products and they send your blood sugar through the roof. And then you get people wondering why they're not seeing, the results that they're looking for when they go to these various diets. And I think that was something that really drove his initiative and made Perfect Keto what it is today.
It's funny you say that because this summer was the first time that I saw pretty much every single mainstream diet food ready to eat product, whether it was Jenny Craig or everybody was like keto. And it's like, come on, it's not keto. It's not. It's got pasta in it.
Right.
Like, I get it. So you think just because it's under a certain number of carbs, but you can't just assume that if you add it to everybody's dietary template, it's going to remain keto. Because it could be contributing, So it's funny how the word keto has really caught on. And really, do you know when this whole keto movement started? Dr. Oz started.
Well, I know when it started getting mainstream because that was during my time. But keto's been around since the 20s. And
No, I understand. But from a product standpoint, it was raspberry ketones.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Oz did a show about raspberry ketones, and every housewife in the world ran out and bought raspberry ketone capsules.
Yeah, promoted as a weight loss supplement, right?
Yes, as a weight loss. And it didn't work. And we know why it didn't work, because it didn't have raspberry skin actually has some ketones in it. But you would have to like take 1 million pounds of raspberries and reduce it down and sieve out just the ketones to end up with one bottle of like the effective amounts of ketones you would need for it to raise blood ketone levels. And it was such a hoax. It was so sad because so many people now today, you couldn't find a raspberry ketone product if I bet you money to find one, because they didn't work and they're all gone now.
Yeah. And that's the sad thing about the supplement space too, is you see that so often where these people come in and they, there's some product that has some ingredient in it that they think is great, and they use that as a marketing ploy, and then they can get a product out on the shelf, use just like fairy dusting in an amount that isn't going to cause any sort of, beneficial effect. You see that so often nowadays, and that's such a frustrating thing to see, especially when people are spending their hard-earned money on these things, expecting to get some sort of result out of them, and they're just not getting them.
So can you bulk on keto? This is something that has been studied, and scientists have looked at it, and there are varying opinions of whether you can or whether you can't. In my mind, it seems logical that you could, because bulking requires a caloric surplus. It doesn't have to be a caloric surplus of carbs. But then there are others who say, no, the carbs have a special magic. It's called insulin. What do you think? Can you bulk on keto?
Yeah. So my response to this is always that if you're following the tradition, or not, I shouldn't say the traditional, but what's become mainstream keto today, I think that bulking is very difficult. You hear so many people that are, doing this very low protein version of keto that is more closely mimicking the keto that was developed for epilepsy back in the 20s.
Right.
And that's not going to be really, I mean, study came out, I think it was at the end of 2018, that showed, healthy men and women that were doing resistance training following a ketogenic diet at 20% protein, they were losing muscle at 20% protein. And so I think that the way that we recommend the ketogenic diet and the fear that we have around protein and being in a state of ketosis prevents people from optimizing the diet for muscle building. So what I always tell people is that, keto can entail a lot of things. Keto is really, it's when your body's in a metabolic state of ketosis, and that can occur through a lot of different variations of a keto diet. You could
actually eat sugar and be in a ketogenic state if you just ate 2 packets of sugar a day.
Right. Yep.
And lots of diets produce ketones. It's not just, the only way you could do it is this way here.
Right. Yeah. And I think so often we get hung up on what this method, the original method of this ketogenic diet, that it had to be done this certain way. And I think we just have to realize that, different people are coming to this diet with different goals. And you're going to have to tailor this diet specifically for that. So the biggest things there's 4 things that I always point out that are really big things to consider if you want to gain muscle on keto. I think before you even get into nutrition, I think the biggest thing that people need to think about is their training stimulus. If you're not training for hypertrophy and you're not training in a way or at an intensity that's going to elicit muscle growth, you're not going to see muscle growth. You can't just think that you're going to eat a perfect diet and then go run outside, and that's going to be what helps you gain muscle. So I think first and foremost, you have to make sure that you have the right training protocol in place. But then when it comes down to your actual nutrition, I think the 3 things that you have to think about is, 1, calories, which you had already brought up. On a ketogenic diet, we tend to be very full. It's hard for people to eat in a calorie surplus. So, if you're eating, I talk to people all the time who they think that they're eating in a calorie surplus, and it turns out they're eating, 1,700 calories. You're not going to gain muscle doing that, especially when you're training.
And isn't that really the promoted benefit of keto? People are like, oh, you're full all the time, so you just don't eat. So, like from an evolutionary perspective, the keto diet would have been great if we had no food, like we were only going to eat once a day. But if you are trying to reach a caloric target every day, let's say you're a hunter-gatherer and you're going through 5,000, 6,000 calories a day simply just by walking through the woods all day long, like slow digesting food is not your friend. Like you have to be hungry again real fast and hungry again real fast. And so, when I look at the keto diet, I think you can bulk on it, but I think exactly what you just said is the problem. People are like, I can't eat another friggin' meal of butter. I can't have another stick of butter today. I can't eat another fatty food. That's why it lends itself to diet, because it naturally reduces caloric intake without even thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's something that I faced myself when I started. When I was starting, I was following that traditional approach, and I was doing intermittent fasting at the same time. So I was not eating. I was eating 2 meals a day, not eating till like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and not really doing a lot of tracking because I've never really been a big fan of that. I try to do a little bit more of intuitive eating. And I'm about 6'3", 6'4". I weigh somewhere between 190 and 200 depending on the time of the year. And I realized that after like 6 months that I had been like chronically eating 1,500 calories a day. And it's like, well, no wonder I can't, that's not nearly sufficient enough for me to really fuel my body and the demands of my body, so that I think that's something that it takes a lot of personalization. You have to really tailor it to yourself. And then the other 2 things I think that are big issues why people don't gain muscle is the protein is one of them. We fear this, too low of protein. We fear this process of gluconeogenesis, which is the, protein being converted to glucose. This is a process that does happen, but it doesn't happen the way that people think it happens. You don't just eat a bunch of steak and have it convert over to directly to sugar. This is something.
In fact, I want to stop there for a second. I want you to validate something I've been saying on this show for a long time. Gluconeogenesis is a very metabolically expensive process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like grinding up wheat to make a powder to eat because you just want to stay alive. Like you're like that desperate to just put anything in the body, right? You're actually burning more calories making the powder than you get from eating it. And so gluconeogenesis is a very metabolically expensive process that the body does in a very limited fashion only when blood sugar is dropping so low that the brain goes, look, man, I'm going to run out of juice here. We're going to fall down. Do something about it. And the body goes, okay, well, we take these glycine, we take these highly glucogenic amino acids. We'll force them through the liver. We'll make some magic and we'll have sugar come out the other end. But that's a very expensive process for the body.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's a very expensive process. It's not an efficient thing. And we know that the body loves to take the path of least resistance. So it's not going to take this path when it is so metabolically demanding for it to do so. And I think the other thing for people to remember, too, is that this is actually an incredibly beneficial process because it's one of the reasons why you don't have to eat carbohydrates, despite the fact that your body does need to have glucose. You know, we do have certain cells in our bodies that cannot use fatty acids and ketones for energy.
Which are those
red
cells?
Blood cells.
Okay.
Red blood cells is a big one. And then there's certain portions of the brain that don't really have a great, or that aren't very efficient at using ketones for energy. So it's important to have
which areas of the brain, please? Which areas of the brain?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I would have to follow up on that for sure. But I know that there's some portions that, it's just not the other fuel sources aren't metabolized as readily. So I think that, you know, this is a great thing, though, because it's a process that exists that allows us to get there without having to overconsume carbohydrates. And it's the same reason why if you don't eat carbs for a month, your blood sugar doesn't go to zero, right? Like your blood sugar, it's still at like, 70, 80, depending on, your level of insulin sensitivity. And this is all a good thing. But to think that just having a ton of excess protein, I mean, when you look at studies on this, even when we look at the most metabolically damaged individuals, which tends to be those who are diabetic, pre-diabetic, insulin resistant, even these studies in these individuals where they're consuming, 50 to 100 grams of protein in a single sitting, we still only see a very, very modest increase in blood sugar with those people.
Right.
So when you start talking about healthy people who are trying to put on muscle, you don't really have to fear that protein is going to be kicking you out of ketosis. And I think another thing that needs to be pointed out there too is that, even if it did, let's say that even protein, for some reason, it does kick you out of ketosis. If your primary goal is building muscle, then there's no harm in you being kicked out of ketosis. This isn't, ketosis for you isn't a life or death thing. You're probably not doing it for a therapeutic reason or, in case of some
fat
medication.
Loss. You're not doing it for fat loss. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. You're, we know that when you're in a state of ketosis, you are in an optimal space for burning fat. But if you're trying to build muscle, you have a different goal during this time. So I think that's something that people need to really consider too, is that, how deep of state of ketosis that you are in is going to be dependent on really what your primary goals are. So I really think that protein one is something that people need to think about. Eating more of it's important. We know that, we were talking about a little bit before the show. We know how important maintaining muscle mass is to our aging process and keeping us healthy as we age and slowing down aging. Once you lose that muscle with age, it becomes a lot harder to put it back on. So anything you can do to, combat that is going to be great. And then the final thing I think with a keto diet that is one of the most under talked about things when it comes to muscle building is the role that potassium plays. And, we know that when you're on a low carb diet, your insulin level's lower, and this causes you to excrete more electrolytes. This causes you to have some more electrolyte deficiencies, and potassium tends to be one of those electrolytes that is deficient. And potassium plays a role in so many processes in the body, but one of the biggest roles that it plays in is in the muscle protein synthesis process. So, if you're talking about being in a caloric deficit, in a protein deficit, and then missing out on some essential nutrients that play a key role in regulating protein building or muscle building, then you're going to find it very difficult for you to gain muscle. So I think that that's one of the reasons why when we look at a lot of the research, you're not going to find many studies that show muscle gain on a ketogenic diet, but I think it's because a lot of these studies are not set up to actually produce muscle gain. So I think that that's a really big one. And then, on that topic, I always like to mention too, if you're somebody who's really into the literature and you like reading, you really have to look at the length of these studies. So when you look at a study that's looking at, say, lean body mass or muscle mass on a ketogenic diet, they're using a DEXA scan. And when you use a DEXA scan, water levels and glycogen levels can really manipulate your readings. So when you start a ketogenic diet in your first couple of weeks, you're going to have, your water levels are going to be a little bit lower and your glycogen levels are going to be lower. And on a DEXA scan, that's going to be registered as a loss in lean body mass. So when you look at these studies and you see, a 2-week ketogenic diet study in which people lost lean body mass, and usually it's like pretty high amounts, you have to understand that there's no way they lost that much muscle in 2 weeks, first of all. And second off, it's kind of a false reading and not really a great descriptor of what's actually going on.
Yeah, it's sarcoplasmic fluid that fills up the muscle fibers. And then that actually, you can rebuild, that comes back very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, and Volek showed us that. Yep.
I wanted to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to coin a new term that we hope catches on and becomes part of the common vernacular as well. The website is perfectketo.com/superhuman. You'll get 20% off your entire order. They have, if you're a fan of low carb, keto, low sugar, they have so many supplements. And that's the thing I like about it. I just found out recently, we had a guy who wanted to become a sponsor, and it has the type of sugar alcohol that he uses is not a fan of the keto community. And I didn't know that. I figured it's sugar alcohol. What's the big deal? Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it gave me diarrhea. And we said, no, you can't come on until you fix the sugar in this product. Really bad. But anyway, and the product tasted amazing. I was like, oh my God, everybody's going to love this, until that night. And I went home and Elisa made me sleep in the yard. But anyway, so, you got to know what really works and what's going to work and keep you in your lane, so to speak, of your keto lifestyle. And you just have to go to perfectketo.com/superhuman to not only see all the great things that they have there, but save 20% off. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, be prepared for a new word. Stay tuned. There's no denying that a low-carb, low-sugar keto lifestyle has been shown to reverse chronic inflammation and normalize insulin sensitivity. But we all want a sweet snack from time to time. Well, no matter what you're looking for, you'll find it at Perfect Keto. Bars, cookies, exogenous ketones, keto-friendly performance enhancers, it's all in one place. I love their chocolate quad ketone salts that balance all 4 minerals. And try their keto bars for unique taste satisfaction, all the while knowing you're staying in your keto lifestyle lane. Go to perfectketo.com/superhuman to save 20% off your purchase today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? The rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do this with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. Imagine if you had a digital twin, one that you could compare your own health and fitness outcomes to, one that showed you whether or not the things you're doing, food you're eating, or drinks you're drinking are actually working for you or against you. Well, now you can. The first ever advanced epigenetic saliva test that compares 20 million different data points of your DNA to help predict what is aging you faster or keeping you younger is being introduced to my audience at a 70% discount from the normal price. Go to seeds.md/epigenetic-test today to learn how to get your own digital twin that will help you take the steps to live longer and stay stronger. Don't wait, because this is a limited time offer not available anywhere else. Once these tests are gone, they're gone. Again, go to seeds.md/epigenetic-test today to learn more.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. We're talking with Chris Irvin. We're talking keto. And we think we came up with a new word. So you've heard of intermittent fasting, which doesn't mean starve yourself all the time. It means just starve yourself for little periods of the day. Really, that's what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And this probably mimics a more evolutionary style meal frequency pattern because we had to go out and find food. It wasn't in the fridge. What about intermittent keto? Did I spell that right? Yes, I did. Intermittent keto.
So, yeah.
Okay. What about intermittent keto? So when you look at a lot of the keto Facebook pages and the keto groups and all this sort of stuff, you see this this common wisdom that more is better, deeper is better. Like I see women on a particular guy's Facebook page a long time ago. He's kind of stopped doing keto now, and they would be like, I've been doing keto for 4 months now. I'm not losing weight. My hair's falling out. I have anxiety. And the answer is you're not eating enough fat. You're not fat adapted. You haven't gone deep enough down into this rabbit hole. Maybe some people would respond to keto if they did it cyclically. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the cyclic approach to keto, which I think calling it intermittent keto is probably the better way to go, because cyclic keto, I think, comes with a lot of connotations now, because, that's been something that people tried to bring up when keto was in its most popular heyday. And then, people really dispelled it. And now we don't like that term. So I think intermittent keto is a much better way to go about it. But I do think intermittent keto is pretty great. It's an approach that I actually take myself. But I always, before we dive into it, I think the biggest thing to point out with this approach is that this isn't necessarily an approach for everybody. And I think that you really need to consider what your primary goals are to see if this is a good fit for you. If you're somebody who, if your primary goal is weight loss, and weight loss is something that you're not really close to where you want to be and you have a long way to go, I think that you're probably better off just sticking with a ketogenic diet and trying to stay in a low carb state of ketosis for as often as possible. And then the other thing I think that's important to point out is that if you are somebody who is experiencing some negative side effects of keto, I would be hesitant to say that your best approach is going to be to just start incorporating carbohydrates back into your diet. What's likely going on is that there's something not quite right with your diet. So you brought up, that case where, women are losing their hair and their hormones are out of whack. This could be a reason for them to start incorporating some carbohydrates. But another thing to consider is that it might also be that you've been chronically under eating calories. You've been on the stair stepper for an hour a day, eating 1,000 calories and eating no protein. That's probably more of the reason why you're losing your hair than it actually being the ketogenic.
There's a really good point, because it comes back full circle to what we said before, that most people on keto aren't really eating enough to begin with.
Yep.
And they don't care as long as the scale keeps changing. This is something I say often to friends of mine. They want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got to lose weight fast. I say, get cancer. And they look at me and they go, Well, that's a crappy thing to no. You want to lose weight. Fastest way to lose weight is get cancer, but you don't want to lose that kind of weight, right? So what you want to do is you want to lose body fat while maintaining or adding muscle. And until we start speaking about weight loss specifically this way, the scale means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. But the problem is that people who jump on the keto bandwagon today want to lose weight at any cost and all costs. They don't care. They just want to be able to say, oh, I'm 114 pounds again. I haven't been 114 pounds since I was 22 years old. But when you were 22 and 114 pounds, you had more muscle, you looked healthier, and now you look like a skeleton in a bag.
Right.
Like, what did you do? Did you do something really good?
Yeah. And I think what I always say and my kind of go-to response with this always is that with a ketogenic diet, low carb diet, or really any, diet that we call anything, any diet that has a name, what always happens is we focus so much on what we're removing from the diet that we forget to replace that with the right things, or we forget to replace it at all. On a ketogenic diet, we have to remember we're removing a whole macronutrient group essentially. So simply removing that group, that's going to help and cause a lot of benefits. If you're somebody, I think what happens, the reason why everybody wants this rapid weight loss is because you see this success story on the internet where so-and-so was 450 pounds and they lost, 200 pounds in the first 6 months, some crazy transformation story. And we think that those types of results are attainable for everyone. And I think one of the things we have to remember is that in some of these cases, we're talking about people who are at the extreme end of metabolic dysfunction and at the extreme end of not being very healthy. And for these people, having carbohydrates really is one of the biggest problems. If you are somebody who's very overweight, if you're somebody who's, pre-diabetic, if you're somebody who's facing a lot of health issues, have chronic inflammation, chances are you probably have some insulin resistance going on, which means that your body doesn't handle carbohydrates very well. So removing those carbohydrates, you're going to see a ton of health improvements. But that doesn't mean that you've necessarily optimized the diet, right? That doesn't mean that that's the only change that you should make. Ideally, we're removing those carbohydrates, but we're replacing them with very nutrient-dense whole foods. We're not replacing it with a ton of packaged, processed foods. We're replacing it with nutrient-dense protein sources. We have high-quality meat, things like that. And I think that that's a big thing that that needs to be a part of this conversation, is that keto is not just removing carbohydrates. It's replacing those carbohydrates with foods that your body can actually put to good use and help repair and restore, things that you may have damaged during your life. So now to get into the actual conversation of intermittent keto, I do think that intermittent keto is a really great approach. And I actually have a pretty good case study of somebody who this worked really well for recently that kind of helped. I have a good friend back in the Midwest here who runs a gym, and he's a bodybuilder himself, carries a lot of muscle mass. And he came to me because he's not somebody who was looking to lose weight, wasn't really looking to drop body fat that much, but he started testing his morning blood sugar, and he saw that his morning blood sugar was a lot higher than he wanted it to be. It was, he was testing in like the 120s. He would find that his blood sugar would raise and crash after he was even having what he would consider to be a little bit better carbohydrate sources, like, sweet potatoes or like lower glycemic things.
I bet his sleep was jacked up too, right? His sleep had to be jacked up. Right.
Sleep was jacked up and energy levels horrible in the afternoon, getting like an afternoon crash and things like that. So he really wanted to know what the best approach was. And he wasn't somebody that I felt like needed to go full keto. So what I told him is I said, there's a couple things that you can do here. You can go full keto, which it might be a little bit more challenging for you. At the time, he was eating 300 to 400 grams of carbs, so consuming a very high carb diet.
Yeah.
And, I said, that's going to be a bit of a adjustment for you to go all the way to keto. But if you want to knock this out quicker and you want to improve these blood glucose levels, that would be probably the fastest approach to do it.
Right.
Now, if we want to look at the approach that might be most optimal for you, might take a little bit longer, but might be a little bit more sustainable and help kind of energize and power your workouts, then why don't we look at something like an intermittent keto approach? So we kind of did this approach where we had carb ups on the weekends. And one of the biggest things with this intermittent keto approach is that when we talk about carb ups, or we talk about like replenishing carbohydrates, that shouldn't be really used as an excuse to go crush donuts and Pop-Tarts and all these different things. I think that's you can really destroy a lot of progress by just having a ton of pizza, beer, and ice cream on the weekend. So if you're going to do it, I think it's really good to keep in mind, quality carbohydrates if you're going to do that. But we did this with him, and after a few weeks of that, plus a little bit of intermittent fasting during the week, we really found that he was able to improve his insulin sensitivity, get his blood sugar levels in check. And I think that that was a really good case study showing that, not everybody, the way that I like to look at, keto and how we should approach diet is that we have like an insulin sensitivity. I look at it like a pressure gauge, right? And, we have a pressure gauge that when we consume a lot of carbohydrates, and if we consume a lot of carbohydrates for a long period of time, that pressure gauge increases. And that's kind of means that we're becoming more insulin resistant. And we have to find ways to relieve that pressure so that we can maintain a level of insulin sensitivity, which will mean that we can still utilize carbohydrates well. And there's a few different strategies you can use to relieve that pressure. One of those strategies can be exercise, right? So if you exercise more, that's going to increase your insulin sensitivity. If you restrict carbohydrates, that's going to increase your insulin sensitivity. If you restrict your feeding window, right? So intermittent fasting, that's going to relieve that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to relieve that. But it's not going to require the same level of relief for everybody. So for somebody who is pre-diabetic, or overweight or dealing with chronic inflammation, somebody like that might need to go a full keto approach to really relieve enough of that pressure to allow them to become more insulin sensitive and their body better utilize the nutrients that they're eating. But for other people, it might not require that same degree of carbohydrate restriction or that same degree of having to do it for as long, right? This intermittent keto approach can be a way that you can, get some carbs in you on the weekends that you can that can help fuel your training sessions, that can, allow you to enjoy some more food so that you don't feel quite as restricted as you may feel on a ketogenic diet. And, and there could be a whole slew of other benefits that could come with it, such as, upregulating different hormones, adjusting all kinds of things. So I think that it's something that we haven't really looked into. There's only been a handful of studies looking at like this intermittent keto, cyclic keto approach. Those studies haven't really shown the best results yet, but I think a lot of them weren't really set up for success. And I think a lot of them were probably more looking to show that it wasn't a superior method to keto versus, those studies should have been looking at was that it was a good tool to accommodate a ketogenic diet. But, in research, we don't always see.
Yeah, I know when you go out hunting for the end result, you usually find it. Intermittent keto is really what Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale proposed 35 years ago in his anabolic diet, where you had carb refeeds on the weekend. But he was like you. You don't go out and eat pizza and beer. You make them good carbs because you want you want to keep insulin sensitivity fairly stable. You built this wonderful insulin sensitivity template over the week. And you don't want to just destroy it on the weekend where you have to come back and start from scratch during the week. But the other thing that I want to touch on in the restrict carbs discussion is you can restrict carbs by just changing the carbohydrates you eat. So if you're eating yams and white potatoes and red potatoes and rice, and you're starting to become a little insulin sensitive, well, cut out one or two of the servings of potatoes or rice and add in cauliflower or broccoli or even green beans. When you talk about restricting carbs, people think right away, how am I going to get through this? Like, I eat so much carbs. Try eating 300 grams of carbohydrates in broccoli every day. Yeah. Like you won't be able to eat all that broccoli, but it's still carbs, and it's a slow digesting carb, and it will replenish glycogen, and it will spike insulin a little bit. So what about that? What about why do we have this all or nothing attitude about everything to do with diet? Why can't you go keto and increase some very low glycemic load, very low carbohydrate impact load type carbohydrates like green leafy vegetables? Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing to point out, that is so that conversation is lost in the shuffle of this dogma that is around diets, and I think it's, as it is with most things, the answer tends to be moderation, right? Like the answer is not way over here and it's not way over here. It's usually somewhere in the middle. And, it's like with the carbohydrate consumption conversation is that, because of the keto movement and stuff, we have people that think that carbohydrates are just inherently bad, which then causes these arguments on the other side that no, they're not bad. And the answer is that it's right in the middle, right? If you can handle carbohydrates and your body can metabolize them and put them to good use, then carbs aren't necessarily bad for you. When it comes to restricting carbohydrates, not everybody needs to be restricting all of their carbohydrates, but you do need to be thinking about the types that you're restricting. I have a hard time believing that anybody has gotten obese off of eating just sweet potatoes, right? Or eating even just, rice or something like that. I think most times we're looking at processed carbohydrates, right? And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that people can do. If you're somebody who's not, that you need to have a health change, that you're overeating carbohydrates, let's look at the type of carbohydrates, like you say, and let's see which ones we can remove. If you're having a ton of bread, if you're having a ton of processed foods and packaged carbohydrates, those are the things that are actually going to be damaging your health. And those are the things that are causing this insulin resistance that we're talking about a lot more than some of these more whole food versions of carbs like tubers and things like that, or, carbs that you might be getting from vegetables and whatnot. So I think that always needs to be an important part of the conversation, is that, we're not, nobody is, well, I guess I shouldn't say nobody. Some people are saying that carbs just are bad, but that's never the case. Nothing is ever good or bad. It's always the context of it. And I think that that's something that we need to think about with this keto movement.
Yeah, Joel Green, who's a good friend of mine and a friend of the show, who's written a couple really good books about nutrition and metabolism and biology, and he likes to call that baby talk. In the world of nutrition, carbs bad, protein good. It's like, no, that's baby talk. It's like goo goo gaga. Like, no, let's form full sentences revolving around full thoughts, and let's stop all this is good and this is bad nonsense.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that, being labeled as like a keto guy in the space, that's something that I've had to fight a little bit. I have, like, when I first got into keto and I wanted to get more education information out there, I came up with like a brand and a social media channel that was, branded as like keto. And I think this kind of led, because of the direction that keto was going, this led many people to think that I fell into this category of people that thinks that all carbohydrates are bad, keto is the only approach to go, and so on and so forth. And really, I'm somebody that sees keto as a tool, right? I think that when you look at our population, you see that around a third of our population in the US is insulin resistant. And that means that a third of our population has probably been overeating carbohydrates for an extended period of time. And that has led to damaging of their health. Those people need to really consider low carb ketogenic dieting. I think that needs to be one of their primary methods that's the most effective lever I think that they can pull to improve their health. Now, that's 1/3 of the population. So the other 2/3, there's probably a different approach that could be beneficial for them, or a different degree of macronutrient manipulation or whatever that could help that. But for that third of the population, that's who I think this conversation of keto is most for. And then to go off of that, you have to remember that just because you are starting a ketogenic diet, that never means that you have to stick to it forever, right? Keto is not an all or nothing thing. It is not if you start it today that you can, this is another one of those baby talk, I think is a great way to describe that, where you get these people who, it's a funny story. I was at best breakdown of this that I've heard is I was at Low Carb Houston 2 years ago, and the diet doctor, Dr. Andreas Einsfeld, he was giving a talk about how people always say that, they start a ketogenic diet, and when they stop it, they gain all the weight back. So that means that the ketogenic diet must not work. And he gave an example of that. He kind of was funny. That'd be like saying you go to the gym, you gain a bunch of muscle, and then you stop going to the gym and you lose the muscle, and you say, well, I tried going to the gym. When I stopped going, I lost.
It didn't work.
It doesn't work. And then he takes it a step further and he goes, that'd be like showering and then not showering anymore. And then you start smelling and saying, well, I tried that showering thing, but when I stopped showering, I started smelling, so it must not work, Yeah. And the point with that conversation is that you hear these stories of people gaining weight back when they come off of a ketogenic diet. And that makes people think that this is like an all or nothing thing, that once you commit to it, you'll never be able to come off.
You're not having a gastric bypass surgery where it's like once they do it, it's there forever. You have to continue to eat the right way.
Exactly. And that's never what's happening. People, because of the way that our world is now and how restricted people feel when they cut those carbohydrates off, when they come out of the ketogenic diet, they're not coming out and reintroducing carbohydrates from whole food sources. They're having pizza and donuts.
Yeah, they're going back and eating the exact way that got them into the crappy shape they were in before they started keto.
Yep.
That's what they're doing. They're thinking, now I can go back and eat crap again like I used to, right?
Yeah. And it's like, and the thing is that, to be completely truthful, chances are, once you come off the ketogenic diet in that short window afterwards, you probably can handle those foods a little bit better. But just like what got you in that position, think about when we're young, right? When we're young, when I was in high school, I was just trying to gain weight. So I was eating loads of carbohydrates. I was just doing whatever I could. And it never affected me in any sort of negative way. My body could handle that. But then over years and years of doing that, then my body started not handling those carbohydrates as well. And that's the same thing that's going to happen to you. If you restore your metabolism and you get back to a healthy baseline, you might be better able to handle those carbohydrates in the short term afterwards.
And for short bursts, like in other words, you could go off the reservation for a weekend. You go to Mexico, you're drinking, you're eating crap, but when you come home Monday, you get back on the program.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, that's even why, that conversation we just finished up about intermittent keto, that's even why I think that's so effective, is because you come off of the keto diet, you have that short burst of carbohydrate intake that your body's probably actually able to put to good use. It ends up being beneficial. But when you start talking about, the chronic overconsumption, kind of just you start getting way away from those principles that got you healthy again, you're going to go back to the way you were before. And I think that it's one of those things where I think most people know that. I don't think that anybody's being really honest with themselves when they come off the diet and they're eating pizza and drinking beer all the time, thinking that, that it's keto that was, coming off of keto is a reason why that happened. I think most people know that, but a lot of times, we don't want to take ownership for our actions, and we don't want to take ownership over the outcomes. And I think it's one of those things where we have to be honest with ourselves and understand that, look, if you were eating the way you were before, common sense says you're going to return to that state of health. That shouldn't come as a surprise. Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to do a lightning round. We're going to use the word keto and a bunch of other words and see what we can learn from Chris Irvin. In the meantime, you can go to the website perfectketo.com/superhuman and save 20% off anything that you see there. And there is a lot to get lost in. If you are a low carb keto person, you will find lots of great things there. Show them some love. They're a new sponsor. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Planet Earth CBD offers a fast-acting transdermal patch that targets your aches and pains for the relief you need. Not only is the patch uniquely patented, but it is widely believed to provide larger quantities of available cannabinoids to the source of pain than other brands' subpar products. Effective for 24 to 48 hours. Experience the benefits of Planet Earth's high-quality transdermal patch. Manufactured by Next Generation Technology in an FDA-registered facility. This pressure-sensitive adhesive delivers rich hemp extract directly through the skin. Be it a neck ache or a headache, you can count on CBD to take off the edge. Go to planetearthcbd.com today to learn more.
Select Savory Snacks Original Biltong is the healthier alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. Their sugar-free biltong is seasoned and then air-dried for up to 2 weeks, providing you with one of the most tender and flavorful meat snacks that you've ever had. They also use a fattier cut of beef, which adds to the tenderness and gives their biltong even better flavor. Select Savory Snacks Original Biltong is the perfect snack or travel companion for your busy life. Get a free bottle of Ranch-tastic seasoning with every order. Free shipping on orders of $99 or more. Get yours today at selectsavorysnacks.com/SHR. There's no denying that a low-carb, low-sugar keto lifestyle has been shown to reverse chronic inflammation and normalize insulin sensitivity. But we all want a sweet snack from time to time. Well, no matter what you're looking for, you'll find it at Perfect Keto. Bars, cookies, exogenous ketones, keto-friendly performance enhancers, it's all in one place. I love their chocolate quad ketone salts that balance all 4 minerals. And try their keto bars for unique taste satisfaction, all the while knowing you're staying in your keto lifestyle lane. Go to perfectketo.com/superhuman to save 20% off your purchase today. I love beef. And if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to PIEDMONTESE.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon 1 banner ad today.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. We're talking with Chris Irvin. He is with a company called Perfect Keto. Perfect Keto. I say keto all the time, and it's not the right way to say it because it just gets confused with other words. Like you have to say keto. It's the ketogenic diet, keto. But anyway, I digress. So I'm going to throw some words at you. See what you think. Okay, keto and autoimmunity.
Yeah, I think that's the area where we need the most research right now. That is potential for the most compelling. I think the most compelling novel therapeutic advantage of keto could be in this area, but we do not have enough research for it yet.
We do see people having some results from going on the keto diet in areas of autoimmunity, but you seem to think that you mentioned when we kind of talked about this briefly, you were like, well, we should talk about the carnivore diet in that aspect as well, right?
Yeah. So, and the only reason why I say that, I think that keto can be just as effective, but I think one of the problems is where I think diet plays the biggest role with autoimmunity is that you're removing a lot of foods that are causing gut flare-ups and that are causing, some systemic inflammation. And I think that, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, people go keto, but there's so many keto products out there now that maybe don't have some of these ingredients removed, that when you go carnivore, you don't really have a choice. You're just eating meat. So all of that stuff is going to be removed. And I think that when we look at autoimmunity and we look at diets for autoimmunity, the ones that tend to work the best are the ones that are producing some sort of an elimination diet effect, right? You're eliminating the foods that are causing the flare-ups and are causing the problems. Now, I know that there's research showing that, and you have keto and gut on there now. I think that autoimmunity and gut really go hand in hand.
They're the same. I say it all the time on the show. I say when we talk about, so everybody loves to say inflammation is at the root of every disease. And then we think about autoimmunity. And we fail to realize that the immune system resides in the gut, and the inflammasome is the army of the gut of the immune system. So you can't talk about autoimmunity, you can't talk about chronic inflammation, and you can't talk about the gut unless you're talking about all three of them in unison.
Yeah, and I love that's something that people are starting to realize, because when you realize that how big of a role the gut plays in this, then you realize how big of a role diet can play in this, right? It just makes sense. If it all resides in your gut, then what we eat is going to play a very big role in our ability to combat these things and maybe improve our outcomes. So, we do have some evidence out there that is showing that, the ketogenic diet can alter the gut microbiome in some ways that may be favorable towards improving gut health, autoimmunity, systemic inflammation, things like that. One of the problems that we face with this, like we always face, is that there's not a ton of research going on with this because there's no money to be made on a ketogenic diet. So because there's no money to be made on keto, you're not going to see a lot of disease research. That's something that requires a lot of private funding. So it's something that we need to have more people doing that. But the anecdotal evidence that we're seeing behind the carnivore diet and the keto diet, I think, is showing that this is something that we need to really think about. We need to look at more. And I think it makes sense. I think it's actually far simpler than what people think, right? If we look at how big of a role the gut plays in autoimmunity, and we look at, the role, how inflammation occurs in the body, then we can pretty easily understand that removing processed carbohydrates and removing excess amounts of carbohydrates that kind of damage a lot of these things, it makes sense that we're going to see some improvements in these areas, right? So I don't think that it's something that's so, it's not maybe mechanistically as crazy as what people think. I think it's really that you're removing some of these common triggers. And if you can do that the right way, if you can follow keto, a whole food version of a ketogenic diet where you're eating more gut promoting foods, maybe you can get some more of those, fermented foods and stuff like that can promote a good diet. That's going to be a very advantageous way to go about treating these things, I think. But we have to remember too, that just being on a diet that says it's keto, but, eating a lot of these packaged foods that have ingredient lists that are 100 ingredients long, those things probably aren't going to lead to those same improvements in gut health. So we have to be realistic with those claims, I think.
I agree. Okay, keto and sleep. People, and no one sleeps well anymore in this country. Is there any evidence that when someone goes keto and it has become fat adapted? Because obviously, when we talk about keto, just starting the diet doesn't make you where you need to be immediately. But if someone is fat adapted, do you see a lot of sleep disturbances go away?
So typically we don't see them go away in research, but I think just like the conversation with like the muscle building is that because the diets aren't set up to optimize for that, right? So just like we were talking about with potassium and electrolytes before, electrolyte deficiencies for magnesium are also very common on a ketogenic diet. And we know that that can really alter our sleep. So I think that, with a ketogenic diet, if you're not supplementing with like a magnesium supplement and those electrolyte levels are getting out of whack, you may actually, that's one of the big reasons why you hear people say that they maybe don't get as much sleep. Another really compelling thing that I've heard that's interesting on this topic is that, keto and sleep, you hear a lot of people report sleeping less, but waking up feeling better. And when you think about this, when you think about the purpose of sleep, which is for us to kind of it's basically like an opportunity for us to cleanse our brain, right? We have a lot of toxins and neuroinflammation and stuff going on from metabolizing nutrients all day that we need to kind of reduce that, and we need to clean it up at night. And when you talk about a ketogenic diet where our brain is primarily running on fuel sources that don't promote or they don't produce as much oxidative stress and actually produce more molecules that help combat oxidative stress in the brain, you can see why we maybe need less sleep. So that's something that I've noticed being on keto for about 4 or 5 years now, is that I don't require as much sleep as I used to, but when I track my sleep, all of my numbers look great. I wake up feeling energized. I don't have any problems going on. So I think that there's still a lot to be understood with sleep in general, and I think with keto and sleep as well. But one thing that I'll say is that I think with sleep, environmental factors probably play a much bigger role than nutritional factors. Being a nutrition guy, I'm always the one to say that, it all starts with diet. But I think with sleep, a lot of it is our environment. You get so many people who, they're drinking a lot of alcohol before bed, or they are on their phones before bed, or they're, they fall asleep with the TV on in front of them, or, they kind of put themselves in stressful situations before bed, and then they wonder why they're getting poor sleep. I think that those are probably the biggest things to think about before we even start talking about supplementation and magnesium.
Well, there's one that we have very little control of, but has been shown in good research, most of it coming out of Scandinavia, is the excitatory effects of these radio frequencies above 1 gigahertz. 1.2, 1.4, which is your cell phones, your tablets, your iPad, and your router, and your cordless phone base station, and not just yours. Then it's everybody around you. We know that these frequencies excite the brain. This has been shown conclusively. This is not like one study. And if you consider the soup of RF and EMF we live in today, I think I think no one is looking at that truthfully. Like no really good scientific studies are done that you can look at and go, wow, this really is something, because they did this to account for that. They did that to account for this. And look, these people's sleep sucked. And when we got the RF out of their environment, because you're young enough, you probably like going camping once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows when you go camping, you sleep great. You're sleeping on the frigging floor. You're sleeping on the ground in a little bag that's, your sleeping bag, right? And it's cold as hell. And you wake up in the morning and you go, man, I slept so good. It's like, come on, you have a $10,000 mattress at home. You can't sleep good there, but you can sleep good on the ground. Yeah. Wait a minute, you're off the grid. You're off the grid.
Definitely. And I love what you said there, the soup, right? It's like, it's the combination of all of the things, because you start looking at those frequencies, right? And you think about how those are like excitatory, and that's going to keep us awake. But then you look at even like everybody knows blue light, right? That's like become like the common theme. We talk about blue light. Obviously, if you're watching a TV before bed, have a cell phone in front of your face before bed. But one of the things, when I was in grad school, right before I started studying keto, I studied circadian rhythms a little bit. And one of the most interesting things I found was that your eyes will actually pick up on blue light and things like that, even when they're closed and you're sleeping. So they've done studies where they show people sleeping. And so for people who aren't familiar with this process, when your eyes recognize light, that leads to a suppression of melatonin, which, for in a normal environment would mean that it's becoming daylight. You suppress melatonin so you can wake up. And then at night, as your eyes recognize darkness, you start secreting more melatonin. And then, that's kind of counteracts cortisol. And then you're able to go to sleep. That's a much simplified version of it. But when you see these studies have shown that, we see a phase shift, which is basically being shifted to like the next part of your sleep cycle or to the next part of your day when you even have a flash of light with your eyes closed. So think about if you're somebody who you're sleeping at home, you have your cell phone next to your bed facing up, maybe you're sleeping with the TV on with it flashing all night. And then you talk about the frequencies, you got the Wi-Fi going, you got all these different things going on around you. I mean, this is a cocktail.
You say just because you're not talking on your cell phone, every second of the day, your cell phone is pinging a cell site. I'm here now.
Yep.
I'm here now. So people think that just because their phone isn't doing anything, that it's off. Unless it's in airplane mode, it is transmitting into your brain while you sleep. And I've had more. There's a girl who listens to my show. She lives on an island off of France. She's originally from Russia. I didn't ask that I can mention her, so I'm just going to say her first name is Maria. Okay. So she found my show some time ago, and she thinks this is the greatest show in the world, and I love her for that. I'm happy that she thinks that. But the first thing that I told her, I was talking about this one day on a show, and I said, when you turn your phone on airplane mode, you sleep better. Mm-hmm. And she messaged me, and she said, I can't believe it. My sleep was wrecked. And now I don't sleep with my cell phone on, and I sleep fantastic. Just that one little change. Change.
That's crazy.
So that RF is zapping you while you wonder why you're not going into deep sleep very long. It's because your brain's getting excited and it doesn't know why. It's like, hey, what's stimulating me right now?
Yep. Yeah. And that's why I just think that it's, that conversation is like when you start thinking about supplementation and nutrition as it relates to sleep, I think that though, like when you start talking about a lot of other markers of health, I think, nutrition, supplementation, biggest levers you can pull. When it comes to sleep, those are going to be the things that might take you the extra 2%. But to get in that first 98%, it's going to be these things that we're talking about. It's going to be trying to get more unplugged, trying to get more into a natural state. And it's not really that hard. It's like, let's think about what would be how, like, I'm not somebody who's so hung up on us needing to do everything like our ancestors used to do, but we do have to understand that our sleep environment now no longer mimics what is natural for a human. And we have to just think about what are the things that we can do to get closer to that. Obviously, having signals not running through your body at night is going to be a really good way to do that. Obviously, not being plugged in technology around bed is going to be a really good way to do that. So I think with sleep, those are probably the biggest things we can think about.
The website is perfectketo.com. If you go to perfectketo.com/superhuman, you'll save 20% off your entire order of anything. They have so many fantastic products. It would be impossible to list them all during this interview. So you can go and check it out yourself. We've been talking today with, I'm sorry, hold on a second. I just did something wrong. We're talking today with Irvin. I'm sorry. Irvin, I'm sorry. I shut my camera off. I couldn't see myself. I'm hoping everybody was still able to see me. We're talking today with Irvin from Perfect Keto. Check them out. Show them some love. They're a new sponsor here on the show. We're going to take one last commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you. So yesterday I made a big announcement. I'm going to try to regain my health and my strength. I had to send photos yesterday to Bill Taco, who is a nutritionist for a lot of pro bodybuilders and stuff. And I was so embarrassed to send them that I almost didn't send them. So I'm going to talk about the pain that I'm living with right now in this journey, starting this journey. And I don't feel like it's going to be that easy for me. So stay tuned. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. We'll be right back.
Unlock your potential with the best cognitive enhancement and anti-aging supplements on the market. PureNootropics.net goes the extra mile for the highest quality ingredients, third-party tested to make sure you only receive the best your money can buy. There's no better choice with their money-back guarantee and free shipping. Try their best-selling DHM. Dihydromyricetin prevents hangovers and helps deliver detox after a night of drinking. Get your DHM and other nootropics and longevity supplements from purenootropics.net, the purest supplements around.
I love beef. And if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers. Hey, this is Carl. For 14 years, you've heard me talk about Can-C eye drops, and they being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at now 61 years old. But I regularly get emails and messages from people who've been using Can-C and having some amazing results. Recently, I got an email from a fellow named Chad, who, because he was on dexamethasone eye drops for over 6 months, developed a cataract. Can-C eye drops actually reduced my cataract to the point where even my doctor has a hard time finding it. I will never stop using Can-C eye drops twice a day. I've been using them since 2008, he says. And you should be too. There is no better way to keep your eyes healthy and seeing clearly than Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com today and get on board, and we will both be looking into the future with very clear vision. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. You've heard about blood flow restricted training since 2006 on SHR, but you're still on the fence. Well, here's the push. BFR is more effective at building muscle than anabolic steroids. That's right, I went there, but it's because it's the truth. My experience with the Be Strong blood flow restriction system is proof to me, and now I'm asking myself why I waited so long. You'll see undeniable changes in the targeted muscles in days and weeks like nothing you've ever tried before. I will never stop using them. Give Be Strong a try. Go to BStrong.training/super-human and use code SHR for 10% off.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. This will be short and sweet. So yesterday I announced that I'm working with a pro nutritionist who works with IFBB pro bodybuilders, men and women. I've enlisted his help because I don't like the way I look anymore. You know, my greatest strength was in my lower back. Well, probably my back and my legs, my posterior chain, and my legs and my butt are gone. So much so that when I wrap a towel around me after I get out of the shower, the towel's got nothing to hold on to anymore because my ass is gone. I mean, I used to do hip thrusts with 500 pounds, like no big thing. I probably couldn't do hip thrusts with 225 right now. And it's scary to me because, you know, everybody keeps saying, well, you know, maintaining muscle as you age, but once you lose it, it's real hard to regain it. And I keep hearing that and thinking, man, you know, I am 62 years old. So let's see what this is going to look like coming back. But I understand the pain that people feel when they set out on a journey that seems impossible. I really feel that way right now. I feel like, you know, I mean, so the caffeine thing is a big thing for me, right? So I've abused caffeine for well over a decade, maybe longer, maybe 12, 15 years. I don't know. And it's not addictive. You know, I like to say I have a caffeine addiction, but in the true scientific sense of the word, it's not an addiction. It isn't. You develop a desire for caffeine because it does stimulate dopamine, but not like cocaine does. And it also doesn't rewire the brain the way alcohol or opioids do. But it definitely causes a hunger for it. So for the next week, I'm going to have one Total War in the morning, which is about 400 milligrams of combined caffeine. I was drinking 2. And so I had my one this morning and came to the studio and got to work. And about an hour and a half after being here, I literally was trying to talk myself out of going next door to the convenience store and getting a Bang energy drink for another 300 milligrams. Literally, like I was like, well, maybe I'll start tomorrow with the whole caffeine thing. I'll start tapering tomorrow. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe that caffeine has such a strong hold on me that I am literally sitting here trying to convince myself not to go next door and get a Bang energy drink. It's really, I've always thought of myself of having such strong willpower, and I have. I've done this once before. I saved my own life once before, so I know I'll do it again. But the beginning of the journey is always so scary. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to regain my health. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to stop looking like a silverback gorilla. That's what my physique looks like now. I have no V-taper. I look like a big barrel with arms. Now, granted, I've got a lot of muscle. So that's an edge over when I first started to save my own life. But I look like a barrel. My legs got skinny. My gut got big and round. Thank God I've got broad shoulders and that kind of carries me and keeps me from looking like a bowling pin. But this is going to be harder than when I had my heart problem and all I had to do was lose weight to save my own life. I've got to literally reverse a handful of conditions, overcome a handful of injuries, and motivate myself through chronic pain to do what I need to do. And the only thing I have to hook my wagon to is the hope that on the other end, I will feel better, have less pain, look better, be stronger, and obviously be healthier. And I don't, and the hard part is seeing that from where I'm standing now is hard. I keep looking at myself and going, well, maybe I missed the boat. Maybe I missed the opportunity to reverse this stuff. Or maybe I'm just old and, you know, Vince Gironda started drinking when he got older. You know, he didn't train anymore. He didn't look like he used to. He started drinking a lot of wine. You know, that's a form of self-medication. Maybe once in a while I think to myself, maybe I just need to get used to the fact that I'm older and I'm just never going to be that guy again. I don't want to believe that. A lot of people reached out to me from yesterday's show. And they have more confidence in me than I have in me, by the way. That's really funny. Because they're all like, Carl, with all the things you know, and you know, as strong as you are, you'll be back. You'll be better than ever. But I don't feel that way right now. I really don't. today was my off day. I didn't do cardio. I didn't train. So tomorrow I go back. I train whole body. The day after I train arms, and the day after I take off. I'm starting very slow and very easy, machine movements only. I'm doing cardio. The 2 days I train at the gym, I'm doing cardio first thing in the morning, fasted, having my first meal before I go to the gym. I'm not training fasted right now. I'm changing it up. One of the things that Bill said to me was, sometimes just changing up what you've been doing will help you. And I believe that. I think I fast too much. I fast too often. I fast too long. That has to do with not preparing food ahead of time, not bringing my Hot Logic with something in it. There's a lot of excuses I can make. The time for excuses have ended. I can't make excuses anymore because if the pain in my lower body continues to get worse, by the time I'm 70, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. I'm serious. The pain that I live with, most people wouldn't live with. The pain that I live with, most people would be on some sort of pain medication. And thank God that through all of my years of strength training, I developed the ability to suck it up, tough it out, ignore it, whatever you want to call. My ability to manage my allostatic load is very, very high because I understand that sometimes discomfort needs to be ignored in order to achieve goals. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm ignoring it. But this is going to be interesting. I'm going to document this journey. I've already started. I've done a couple short videos where I just talk to the camera, kind of like on Big Brother when they go in the room. No one's supposed to be listening to them and they're talking about all the other people. But I'm telling you right here openly, I'm afraid. I really am. I'm afraid that I won't be able to be jacked ever again. And I really want to. But I do have a lot of tools in my arsenal. I just started ARA 290, sabinitide. I'll be doing that for 28 days. That'll help with some of the nerve issues I have. I'm confident of that. And there's other things I have up my sleeve as well. But I want to thank those of you who reached out to me via message, email, Facebook, Instagram, who have so much more confidence in me than I do right now, because I am using your confidence in me to make up for my lack of confidence in me right now. So thank you for reaching out to me. And tomorrow we have a great show, by the way. We're going to flip the script tomorrow. There's a lot of talk about CO2 levels going up in people's blood because they're wearing masks. But this may not be a bad thing, believe it or not. You're going to think I'm crazy. People said, oh, it suppresses the immune system. That may not be true. In fact, we're going to be joined by a guy tomorrow who has been discussing breathing techniques for a very long time. Top of the food chain guy. He understands Buteyko. He understands rapid breathing. He understands all of it. He's the guy who taught me that CO2 is not a waste gas. It actually has special functions, good functions. It actually makes red blood cells carry and deliver oxygen better. And he has promoted this idea that gently elevating CO2 levels in the blood have amazing benefits for anxiety, for health, for performance, for sleep, for everything. So I asked him to come on tomorrow, Anders Olsen, and he's going to talk about that wearing a mask may actually be a good thing, even if you aren't worried about COVID-19. We're going to explore that tomorrow. These are the kind of conversations you'll only ever hear here on Superhuman Radio. Please share the show and tune in tomorrow. And thank you for being here today. And thanks to all of you for reaching out to me. I believe in myself because you believe in me, and I will do this. Okay. Talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.